2 million years ago, a creature stood in the African savanna. No claws sharp enough to kill, no fangs long enough to matter, no fur thick enough to survive the cold, no speed to outrun a single predator hunting it. By every rule nature had ever written, this creature should not have survived the week. But it did. Not for a week, not for a century. It survived long enough to build cities, launch rockets, and read this sentence on a screen made of glass and light. And the reason isn't intelligence. It isn't opposable thumbs. It isn't even language. It's one invention. A single discovery so simple a child could stumble onto it by accident. And yet every other species on this planet, in over 3.8 billion years of evolution, never figured it out. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at a candle, a stove, or a campfire the same way again. If I asked you what separates humans from animals, you'd probably say the brain. Bigger brain, smarter species. Simple, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Elephants have brains 3 times larger than ours. Whales carry brains that outweigh a human skull 10 times over. Size was never the deciding factor, because if it were, dolphins would be running governments and elephants would be building airports. So maybe it's tools. Chimpanzees use sticks to fish for termites. Crows bend wire into hooks to retrieve food. Otters smash shells with stones held against their chests like tiny hammers. Tools aren't unique to us either. Maybe it's language then? Whales sing across entire oceans. Bees dance in patterns that communicate exact distances and directions to food. Prairie dogs have been recorded using different alarm calls for different predators. So if it's not brain size, and it's not tools, and it's not even language, what is it? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because the answer is something so common, so unremarkable to us today, that most people scroll past it 100 times a day without a second thought. Before we get to the answer, let's follow the trail scientists spent over a century chasing, because it leads somewhere unexpected. For decades, anthropologists believed the defining human trait was walking upright. Bipedalism. Freeing the hands. It made sense on paper. Free hands meant tool use. Tool use meant hunting. Hunting meant meat. Meat meant bigger brains. Except there's a problem with that theory. A big one. Walking upright happened nearly 4 million years ago. But our brains didn't start their dramatic growth spurt until almost 2 million years after that. Something else happened in between. Something that took an ape with a modest brain, and within a geological blink of an eye, tripled its size. For years, researchers were stuck. What could possibly cause that kind of explosive change in such a short window? The clues were sitting in plain sight the entire time. Blackened soil, charred bone fragments, ash layers buried in cave sediment in South Africa, dated to nearly 1 million years old. Fire. Not fire as a weapon, not fire as a light source. Fire as something far more dangerous, far more transformative, and far more human than anyone expected. Here's what almost nobody tells you about fire. It wasn't the warmth that changed everything. It wasn't even the protection from predators, though that mattered too. It was cooking. Think about what your body does every single day without you noticing. Right now, a huge percentage of the calories you eat are spent just breaking food down, chewing, digesting, absorbing. Raw food is a nightmare for a body like ours. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, spend over 6 hours a day just chewing raw plants and meat to extract enough calories to survive. 6 hours, every single day. Basically a part-time job, just to stay alive. Now imagine what happens when you apply heat to that same food. Cooking breaks down tough plant fibers before they ever enter your mouth. It denatures proteins in meat, unraveling them so your stomach doesn't have to fight as hard. It essentially pre-digests your meal outside of your body. Scientists estimate cooked food can deliver up to twice the usable calories of the same food eaten raw, for a fraction of the digestive effort. And here's where it gets interesting. The human gut, compared to other primates our size, is unusually small. Our intestines are shorter. Our stomachs are less muscular. On paper, we should be terrible at extracting energy from food. Except we don't need to be good at it anymore, because fire does the hard work for us. For the first time in the history of life on Earth, a species had found a way to digest its food outside of its own body. Here's where the story stops being about food and starts being about everything else. When your body stops spending massive amounts of energy on digestion, that energy has to go somewhere. In early humans, it went somewhere extraordinary: the brain. The brain is the most expensive organ in your body. Pound for pound, it burns through roughly 20% of your total daily energy, despite being just 2% of your body weight. No other organ comes close to that kind of energy demand. For most animals, that kind of energy cost is a luxury they simply cannot afford. Evolution doesn't build expensive organs unless there's a way to pay for them. Cooking paid the bill. Within roughly 2 million years of the earliest confirmed use of fire, the human brain nearly tripled in size. Not gradually. In evolutionary terms, it happened almost overnight. But energy alone doesn't explain everything, because something else happened around those first fires. Something social, something almost invisible in the fossil record, but written all over human behavior today. And this is where the story takes a turn nobody expects. Because fire didn't just feed the body, it changed what happened after dark, the one time of day when every other creature on Earth was forced into hiding. What happened when early humans stopped hiding at night is the part of this story that historians believe gave birth to language, storytelling, and even religion itself. But it's also the part of the story where things very nearly fell apart completely, where an entire evolutionary advantage could vanish in a single bad night. Last time, we found out that the single invention that separated humans from every other animal on Earth wasn't a weapon, a tool, or even language. It was fire. We saw how cooking food unlocked nearly double the calories for a fraction of the effort, and how that extra energy fed something extraordinary, a brain that nearly tripled in size. But energy was only half the story. What happened after dark, around those first flames, is what actually built the foundation of human culture, and it very nearly didn't survive. Let's pick up where we left off. Picture it. Africa, nearly 1 million years ago. The sun sets, and for every other creature on the savanna, darkness means danger. Predators hunt more effectively at night. Vision fails. Vulnerability spikes. For almost every species that has ever existed, nightfall is a time to hide, freeze, and wait for the sun. But early humans didn't hide anymore. They gathered. Around a fire, predators kept their distance. Most large carnivores have an instinctive fear of flame. For the first time, a group of hominins could sit in the open, in the dark, without dying. And once you remove the fear of imminent death, something strange happens. You get bored. You get social. You start talking. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years studying modern hunter-gatherer communities in the Kalahari Desert, comparing daytime conversations to nighttime conversations around the fire. The difference was staggering. During the day, conversation revolved around complaints, gossip, and logistics, practical survival talk. But at night, around the fire, the entire tone shifted. Stories, myths, jokes, songs, tales about ancestors, about the origins of the world, about right and wrong. The campfire wasn't just a source of warmth, it was the world's first classroom, the first theater, the first place a species could sit still long enough to imagine something that didn't exist yet, and describe it to someone else. Every religion, every legend, every piece of oral history that shaped early human culture. Historians believe it was born in the flickering orange light of a fire that shouldn't have been possible for a hairless, clawless, fangless ape to control. But here's the part of the story that rarely gets told, the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Fire is not a gift. It's a gamble. Every early human who learned to control fire was standing inches away from something that could kill them, burn their shelter to ash, or scar them for life in seconds. Unlike claws or venom, fire has no instinct wired into it. There is no innate human understanding of hot. A child today still has to learn that lesson the hard way, usually once, usually painfully, and it very nearly didn't work out. Archaeological evidence suggests fire use was wildly inconsistent for hundreds of thousands of years. Some groups mastered it. Others lost the knowledge entirely, potentially through migration, disease, or simply the death of the one person in the group who knew how to keep an ember alive through a storm. Think about that for a moment. For most of early human history, fire wasn't guaranteed. If your fire went out and no one in your group knew how to start another one from scratch, using friction, using flint, using patience measured in hours, not seconds, you didn't just lose warmth. You lost your edge over every other predator on the continent. Some researchers believe entire hominin groups may have vanished not from famine or disease, but from the simple, quiet tragedy of losing their fire and never getting it back. We are not descended from the strongest early humans. We're not even descended from the smartest. We're descended from the ones who kept the fire alive. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you in a different way. Every single achievement humanity has ever accomplished, agriculture, cities, writing, medicine, electricity, space travel, sits on top of a foundation built almost 1 million years ago by creatures who had no idea what they were starting. They weren't trying to build civilization. They were trying to eat dinner without spending 6 hours chewing raw meat. But that one act, controlling something as unpredictable and dangerous as fire, rewired the trajectory of an entire species. It shrank our jaws. It grew our brains. It gathered us into circles after dark and taught us to speak in stories instead of grunts. It gave us free time, for the first time in evolutionary history, that wasn't spent on immediate survival. And free time, it turns out, might be the most dangerous and most powerful resource a species can ever discover, because free time is where imagination lives. Free time is where the first questions about the stars, about death, about meaning, were ever asked. Every other animal on this planet spends nearly every waking hour securing its next meal. We were the first species to look up from that struggle and ask, what else is there? That single question, asked for the first time by firelight, by a creature that had no business surviving the week, became mathematics, religion, art, philosophy, and science. It became everything you've ever built your life around. So the next time you strike a match, boil water for coffee, or watch a candle flicker on a dinner table, understand what you're actually looking at. You're not looking at a household convenience. You're looking at the exact same force that pulled a defenseless ape out of the jaws of extinction and set it on a one-way path toward everything it would eventually become. Every invention since, the wheel, the printing press, the microchip, is a descendant of that first flame, a more sophisticated version of the same original decision, to take something dangerous, something the rest of nature feared, and bend it towards survival. We didn't outlive every other species on Earth because we were the strongest. We didn't win because we were the fastest, the biggest, or even the smartest in the way most people assume. We won because one night, nearly 1 million years ago, in the middle of a dark and hostile world, something with no business surviving looked at fire, and instead of running from it like every other creature on the planet, it sat down next to it, and it never got up again. If this 2-part story changed how you see something as simple as a flame, that's exactly the kind of story this channel exists to tell. Subscribe, because next time we're uncovering the second invention that almost undid everything fire made possible. You won't want to miss it.